Welcome to the Banking with Life Q&A series. I'm your host, James Neathery, and this is where I answer your questions concerning the infinite banking concept. Let's get started. What is insurable interest and why does it matter who my beneficiary is? That's a very fair question. Mainly, life insurance is a replacement of a loss. It is not an investment. I don't buy life insurance to try to put pennies in so I can get rich by, make my beneficiaries rich because I died. I want to live a long time. But if I die prematurely, I want my family taken care of. If I graduate, my family not only loses me, but they lose all of my future income. That's what the death benefit is replacing, right? Well, who has an insurable interest in me? Right? You can't go buy life insurance on a stranger because there's no insurable interest. There's no loss to you. So life insurance is a replacement of a loss, right? If I graduate, what is the loss to you? It's zero, right? So there's no insurable interest. If my family loses me, like I said, they lose me and my future income. So that is why the beneficiaries matter. It's just like maybe I'm giving, $10,000 a year to a church. I'm a donor to a nonprofit, my example. If I graduate, I'm not going to be able to give them any money in the future. There's an insurable interest there, right? Why? Because there's a loss. They lose me, they lose my donations. So it does matter who your beneficiaries are, and that's kind of why. All right, well, dividends that are used for paid-up insurance don't reduce the PUA premium that I can pay, correct? You are correct. And an efficient policy should be designed where the dividend election is paid into the paid-up additions rider. It increases your basis, it increases your capital, it increases future dividends, but it does not limit what you have the contractual right to pay into a PUA premium. What happens when a company demutualizes? Well, typically the company demutualizes so it can be sold, or they want to be like all the other financial institutions around the world and they want to be able to print money out of thin air by issuing stocks. And typically, what happens to the policy owner, they're compensated in some way for their ownership position. Dividends may or may not be continued to pay if they're participating policies. But that's what happens. It becomes a stock company. They're either going to issue stocks to the open public or they're going to have one entity buy the stocks. So your ownership position in that company is compensated, but you're no longer an owner of the company. You're just a customer of the company, right? So in a nutshell, those are a few things that happen. In this question, how would the potential estate tax changes affect life insurance policies? You'll probably want more death benefit, right? Because the current exemptions are going to sunset in 2025, so the exemptions are going to lower. So you probably want more death benefit to compensate if the estate tax issue is going to affect you. How do you determine how much you can take out, quote unquote, as retirement income? For example, on page 54, becoming your own banker, how is the first withdrawal of $92,000 being supported? Well, that's a very good question. How do you determine how much you can take out? Well, you determine that by how you're taking the income. Are you withdrawing from the policy values, or are you borrowing against the policy values? And so you determine how much you can take successfully. When are you going to die? Don't know. But there'll be some work that your agent would do. It says, look, you can, if the dividends don't change, you can take this X number of dollars out each year until you're age 90, 95, or 100. Right? So you got to pick a time period. And it does matter. You want that policy in force when you graduate. Okay. So you don't want to cannibalize that policy. In Nelson's example on page 54, where he's taking out $92,000, I believe that's in equipment financing. What page? 54. Yep. So, if you haven't had the opportunity to hear Nelson live, you can hear him, recorded on a DVD series. And he explains, and he used to explain all the time, is how he determined the income in all of those illustrations. That's illustration number 1 in equipment financing. And the way Nelson determined that, and he would tell the story about the artillery range and the expendable, corporals in the military and, firing for effect and just the rangefinders. And it was a great analogy. But he determined the income based on that death benefit, right? So if you look at the death benefit, this is page 54, illustration number 1 in equipment financing. He started taking out $92,000 at the end of year 36, age 65, so he's year 37, age 66. But if you look at the death benefit, way over there in the far right column, he has $2.388 million in death benefit. If you go down to the very bottom, Nelson killed him at age 85, and the death benefit is $2.4 million. That's how Nelson determined the income in each of those illustrations, is he kept the death benefit relatively equal. So he could have taken more income, right? These are withdrawals. These are not loans. He could have taken more income, and the death benefit would have been less at age 85. He could have taken less income, and the death benefit would have been greater, right? So how do you determine? It depends on your circumstances. That may be more than you wanted to know, but I had fun reminiscing. So I hope that helps. You determine how much income you need at the time. The future is unknown, and how you're going to manage that policy once you start taking income from that asset. Aren't the improvements between illustration 1 and 4 and becoming your own banker essentially paying more premium and less surrender of insurance dividend credits? Yes, no question. No magic going on there. The question is, where did the premium come from? So premium was actually being paid, right? In illustration number 1, beyond the 4th year, premium was being paid. How was it being paid? Through dividends, right? How is it being paid? Through dividend surrenders, right? And PUA surrenders. Illustration 2, 3, 4, and 5, how was that premium being paid? It was cash flows that was going to Associates Finance. Thank you for listening. If you have a question that you would like an answer to, email me at james@bankingwithlife.com. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day.